So thank you all very much for coming. We love to talk with people about recycling and what does and doesn't go in the blue bin, because as you're going to find out, mistakes can cause real problems. So we love having other people come and learn about how our system works and why all those pesky little rules are in place. And we hope that you'll all go off and be ambassadors within your own families and workplaces and neighborhoods, spreading the word to help all of your neighbors and other folks in your lives do the right thing as well. So my name is Robin. I work for CSWD in Solid Waste District as the event and outreach coordinator. And I'm joined by two colleagues, Ethan and Rhonda, who are going to be helping me out fielding your questions and things. You want to go ahead, Rhonda?
Sure, yeah. So I typically do the pre-K through college education, but I am psyched to be here tonight to assist wherever I can.
And I'm Ethan Hausman, business outreach for CSWD, and I really enjoy these because I very much remember what it was like to be wondering all these questions myself. Thanks for joining us.
All right.
Speaking of questions, actually, let me just mention that the Q&A is a great way for you to let us know what you're thinking, both comments or questions. But the Q&A feature is your best way of communicating with us, and we'll make sure that Robin knows those questions are coming in as she goes.
Yeah, the overall plan is that we'll have lots and lots of time at the end available to answer all your questions and any Stump the Chump items you've brought. I'm going to try to just go through the slides relatively quickly, but if there's something that doesn't make sense right while it's happening, or just a question pops into your mind that you want us to address later, just go ahead and type it on into the Q&A box, and Ethan and Rhonda will be in charge of wrangling those, and they'll interrupt me if it looks like it needs addressing right away, and otherwise we'll be collecting them and taking care of all of them at the end. So we're just having a brief technical interlude here while I get screen sharing going. One more click. And I think we're there. All right, there seems to be a little bit of a delay, but hopefully you are now looking at a slide that says Recycling 101. Is that what you're seeing, Ethan and Rhonda?
Yep. Excellent.
So we will just dive right in. First, just a quick overview of who and what CSWD is. We're a regional solid waste district. Just by coincidence, not by law, we happen to, all of our member towns are exactly the same towns that form Chittenden County. Other regional solid waste districts, sometimes it's only 2 or 3 towns, sometimes it's a big part of a county or parts of more than one. We're just coincidentally all the towns in Chittenden County. And contrary to, there's a lot of confusion about who picks up recycling in particular, but a lot of folks think we are the folks who pick up the trash and recycling, and we are not. And that is all done by private companies in Vermont, with a few exceptions like Burlington. The city of Burlington picks up recycling within its borders. But our job is to try to help everyone who lives, works, and plays within our boundaries to produce less trash overall, just less stuff that you're needing to get rid of. And for the stuff that is at the end of its life, we want you to know what the best way is to properly dispose of it. A lot of things, unfortunately, trash is the right answer. And we'll talk more about that as we go, but many things can be recycled in the blue bin, which is what we'll be focused on tonight. Also, a lot of things can be recycled in other ways. And then we also operate something called the environment. So we have 7 drop-off centers around the county that people can use. And then we also run the Environmental Depot, which is a hazardous materials drop-off center that's open all year round, which is pretty unusual. A lot of places just have, pop-up events, once a month or once a quarter. So all year round, we accept household hazardous waste. So any cleaners or bleach or paint you need to get rid of, we will take it off your hands. There's no charge for district residents. And then we also operate Green Mountain Compost, which is a commercial composting operation that does amazing job with all the food scraps and yard waste and things that people collect, and turns that into yummy, rich compost that goes out and helps in people's gardens grow in the next generation of food. So before we get into what, just a couple thoughts on why. Why is recycling important? First and foremost, it saves natural resources and energy. It's just common sense. When you buy something and use it and then throw it away, and then somebody else needs that same thing, or you need it, and then you go buy another one, all sorts of resources are being used up there in the manufacturing and transportation processes. And it just doesn't make sense to throw stuff in a landfill, reason number two, where it's just gonna be buried in the ground for, eons, when we can make use of those materials. So we try not to, there are some things that people throw away that really do need to go to the landfill. That is the best option for them, because we don't have a way to turn them into something new. But everything that can be turned into something new, that's what we want to capture. And this process, it's not magic. There's no like recycling fairy that takes everything out of your blue bin and just waves a wand and turns it into a new product. There's a lot of steps in between your blue bin and what you've put in there becoming a new product. And all of those steps create jobs. People are sorting the recycling, and then people are processing it into new materials, and then people are making it into new products. And all of that helps us, versus if it's going in your trash can, it's making one trip to the landfill and then it's done. It'll just sit there forever. So recycling really helps our community in a lot of ways. And what we're going to be talking about a lot today is a facility we call it the MRF, which stands for Materials Recovery Facility. And that's the location where all of the blue bin recyclables that get collected, they come to the MRF. And a lot of people, and I, before I started working here, kind of think of this as a recycling plant. And it really isn't, as we'll talk about as we go. This is just the first step in that complicated process of turning stuff into new products. And the very first step is just sorting it. So that's the only thing we're doing. It comes in all mixed up in a jumble, and we sort it out, separate all the different types of materials, and then bale it up, like you see in the top left corner there, into bales that are the same material. And then we sell them to somebody who then needs to process it, so that whether it's by melting it or shredding it or dissolving it in water, they need to turn it back into a raw material so that the raw material can be used to make new products. So we're going to talk a lot about that facility today, because that is a really key driver in what can and can't be recycled. And another really important thing to note along these lines is what can and can't be recycled. It's not like a black or white, yes or no situation that's universal. It's different everywhere you live. And a lot of people find that frustrating. We do too. It would be nice if there was just one right answer for everything. But there are so many steps that go into it that a material that might be easily recyclable in one community isn't in another. A lot of times people think, when they're looking at something and thinking, well, can this go in the recycling bin? Their first thing is, well, what is it made of? And what material is it made of? And that matters, but it doesn't matter what it's made of if we can't even get it through the first step in the process. So the first thing is we have to be able to sort it and bale it. Then we have to be able to sell it to somebody. Then they have to sell it to somebody, and so on. And each of those steps has to make economic sense, because people aren't going to buy, a bunch of crushed up aluminum cans from us unless after they turn it into something else, they can sell it to somebody for more than they paid for it. So they need to cover their costs, and in many, probably most cases, they need to make a profit. So whether or not something is profitable is going to vary depending on where you are. If you're in, the LA area, you've got millions of people really close to each other. You've got a port there, you've got trains, all kinds of highways for trucks to go on. It's a lot easier to move things from one place to another than it is here in Vermont, where, we're a little bit on the back roads in terms of having markets to sell materials to. So the cost of getting stuff from our sorting facility to the plant that's going to turn it back into a raw material is an important factor in what can and can't be recycled. But the most limiting factor at the front end is what can our equipment process. Our equipment was designed, we were early adopters, as Vermonters are in so many things. So we have like first generation recycling sorting equipment. And back when the equipment was designed, it was basically the things that were being separated were newspapers and bottles and cans. And that was pretty much it. Packaging has gotten so much more complicated since then. New technologies have been developed that make it easier to sort out some of those things that aren't a newspaper or a bottle or can, but we're still dealing with fairly early on equipment. And basically our equipment is designed to separate things that are flat, like paper and cardboard, from things that aren't flat, like bottles, cans, and jars. And then after that, we're back to people doing the sorting. So real live people, just like you and me, who are standing all day long at a conveyor belt. I think there was a picture here in the bottom left corner, pulling things out of there and sorting them into the proper bin. And that's one of the reasons why it's really important that materials be clean, empty, clean, and dry when they go into your recycling bin. Because, if there's a little bit of yogurt left inside, it might not be too gross, for the day it's sitting in your kitchen recycling container. But by the time it goes, down to the basement and then out to the curb and then into a truck and gets brought to our place, a lot of time can go by. And, if it's hot out, that stuff can get pretty nasty pretty fast. And these are good, nice people who don't want to be handling that stuff any more than you or I would want to be. So what we accept is limited in basically by the physical size and shape of things. We can't take things that are too huge. We can't take things that are too little. And we'll talk about those details as we move forward. I want to start just by giving you, since we can't do in-person tours these days, this is just a quick video tour of our MRF and how it works. And then we'll get into some of the nitty-gritty details after that.
Blue bin. Think it's just another place to put your household waste? Think again. Things you put in this blue bin are actually valuable resources that are about to embark on an amazing journey we call recycling. Plastic bottle, when it falls into the bin, it's about to take a magic carpet ride to a new life. It could become another bottle or something like this sleeve. This is the first stop on the journey, CSWD's Materials Recovery Facility, or MRF for short. Thanks to you, More than 80 million pounds of recyclables are processed in this building each year. They go through a wild series of spinning discs, speeding conveyor belts, whirling magnets. It's sort of like a Willy Wonka factory for recyclables. When they come out the other side, they're shipped off to market to be made into new products. Trucks come into this building. We call it the tip floor. That's because this is where trucks literally tip their recyclables out onto the floor. It can look like quite a mess, but that's only because the MRF hasn't worked its magic yet. Another machine, a skid steer or a loader, pushes it all onto the first conveyor belt, where it heads up the hill and into the pre-sort room. The pre-sort room is where the first line of workers take off bags of shredded paper for special handling. They also take out items that made it into your bin by mistake, like styrofoam, plastic bags, and hazardous materials. It takes concentration and quick hands, but it's important to get these contaminants out now. Contaminants lower the value of recyclables, and they can get caught into the machinery or even injure workers. Cardboard is the first material to be sorted. A screening machine with spinning discs pulls off big pieces of cardboard while everything else drops through it onto a conveyor below. After the cardboard, glass is next. The recyclables go through something called a bottle breaker, which does exactly what it sounds like. It crushes glass into small pieces. That crushed glass falls through a screen onto its own special conveyor. The rest of your recyclables are still on the move. They're headed for 2 more sorting screens. We call paper, like newspaper and office paper, fibers. These items float on top of the screen, while containers, like plastic bottles and metal cans, bounce down the hill. The fibers head for a conveyor where workers pull out boxboard and cardboard for separate recycling, and they pull off any trash that might have sneaked by the first step. The plastic and metal containers are headed for a special machine called a ballistic screen, whose rows of paddle arms weed out any leftover fibers and drop the containers onto their own conveyors. The workers on the next line are looking for plastic containers like jugs, tubs, and bottles. These plastics may end up as plastic or composite lumber, bottle caps, or even fleece sweaters. Each worker on this line is looking for a different type of plastic to sort, and each type of plastic needs to be kept separate. That's because every type of plastic is different. Companies that buy the kind of plastic used in water and soda bottles, for example, don't want other plastics. The color of the plastic can also make a difference. A colorless plastic milk jug is worth more because it can be made into more things than one that has been colored orange or blue. Next up, metal. Ferrous metals, or metals with iron in them, are in for a fun ride as they pass under a high-powered electromagnet, which lifts them off the conveyor and drops them down a chute into a bunker below. The last sorter on the line is looking for aluminum. Aluminum cans, aluminum pie pans, big balls of aluminum foil, and those products will be recycled into just about any other product you can think of made of aluminum. Aluminum siding, engine parts, or another aluminum can. After all the paper, plastics, and metal are sorted out, they're each baled into giant cubes that weigh up to 1,700 pounds apiece. These bales will be loaded onto tractor-trailer trucks and sold to companies that will recycle them into new products. These bales are worth a lot of money. Some are worth $30, some are worth more than $700. Each year, the MRF sells an average of $4 million worth of recyclables. But wait, we're not done yet. Remember that bottle breaker? Well, that broken glass took an exciting trip of its own past vacuums, fans, and magnets that picked out any paper, plastic, or metal bits that may have gotten mixed in. The glass then goes through a spinning cylinder called a trommel, and the end product is used in road building projects and in drainage projects. That's the end of this part of the amazing journey we call recycling. If you were a newspaper or a plastic bottle, your journey would have taken you only a half an hour from door to door. If you ever have a question about what you can recycle in Chittenden County, Check out our A to Z list on cswd.net or give us a call at 872-8111. Thanks for joining us and your recyclables on this amazing journey. Remember, recycle right so the equipment and people at the MRF can do their job as effectively and safely as possible.
And I'll use this opportunity just to jump in and mention that questions, in many cases, we're going to answer questions live for everyone to hear the answers, but in some cases we are typing answers to make sure we get to everything. And so you can see the answers that we've typed to questions if they've been answered via the Q&A. So feel free to check out the answered tab to see those. Thanks.
Thanks, Ethan. So just before the last little thing before we get into the nitty-gritty specifics is just to give you a little glimpse of the future. I mentioned that our current technology is on the early side, so what we're able to take and process is a little more limited. That technology has come a long way in the 30-odd years since we built our facility. So this is just a quick video that shows what a fancy new MRF might be able to do. And we are in the process of looking at sites and putting together a plan. We're hoping that we're going to have a new higher tech MRF online sometime within the next 3 to 5 years. And this is something like what it's going to look like. And that will give us a lot more options in terms of the materials we're able to take in.
Welcome to the Green Waste Recovery and Material Recovery. Over what it is we do here at the recovery facility, or MRF for short. We'll be looking at the recyclables MRF, which is just one of the 3 processing facilities here at Green Waste. We also have a garbage MRF and a yard waste MRF, but we'll save those for our next tour. Processing about 1,000 tons of single-stream recyclables every day. Percent of those recyclables. The process starts here at the scale. Trucks are weighed in once they arrive and again after they are emptied. The difference is the number of recyclables that are delivered to us to be sorted and processed. Recyclables are brought in by collection trucks with material from both homes and businesses. Sorters will take the first look at the material while it is still on the floor. They'll pull out any large recoverable items and contaminants that can later get caught in the machine. Using bucket loaders, the material is fed into the metering bin, where it is then spread onto the conveyor belt to begin its journey through the MRF. Once on the conveyor belt, the first stop is pre-sort stations, where sorters remove contaminants, large items, film plastic, bag shredded paper, and rigid plastic before the material goes through any of the machines. During this initial pre-sort process, unopened bags are also removed, tossed down a chute, where a bag breaker mechanically opens the bags and the conveyor belt reintroduces the material to that same pre-sort line. Following the pre-sort stations, the OCC disc screen is used to separate cardboard from the recycling stream. OCC stands for Old Corrugated Containers. The OCC screen uses a series of rotating discs designed to sort the material by allowing paper and other objects to fall through the disc while the pieces of cardboard float over the top and onto a conveyor belt that leads to a quality control sort station before going into a bunker for later baling. Directly under the OCC screen, glass falls onto debris roll screens, separating glass from the rest of the material and moving it into a glass cleanup system before it is hauled away to be further processed at a glass processing facility.
Robin, people are noting that the volume is low. If you're able to do anything about that, and I'm not sure you can, but.
Unfortunately, mine is maxed, so hopefully they can adjust it on their own, at their own end.
Great, just wanted to pass it along. Thanks.
Yeah, sorry about that, folks.
While the other is set to separate these paper.
Nope. Sorry, everybody. Let's see if we can.
Quality control sort station before going into a bunker for later baling. Directly under the OCC, glass falls onto debris roll screens, separating glass from the rest of the material and moving it into a glass cleanup system all the way to be further processed at a glass processing facility. The polishing screens, like the OCC screen, have a series of rotating discs that are set to material. These discs can be adjusted as needed. Currently, there are 3 polishing screens. 2 screens are set to separate, while the other is set to separate mixed paper. Plastic and metal containers fall back. After each screen, quality control station where sorters remove any film plastic or contaminants. Having vacuums directly over the post-sort stations helps in remove film plastic more efficiently from the rest of the recyclables. The plastic and metal containers, after falling back, continue onto the electromagnetic separator, where a large magnetic conveyor belt attracts ferrous metals. As the conveyor belt rotates, the material is released once it reaches the discharge point. These metals go through a post-sort station and into a bunker for later baling. The remaining containers continue on. Plastic containers go through infrared sorting systems that separate plastic containers by the type of material they're made of. We have a series of 3 optical sorters set to separate PET beverage containers, HDPE color and natural containers, and plastic containers numbers 2 through 7. After each optical sorter is a quality control station where sorters will pull off any material that isn't PET, HDPE, or plastics 2 through 7. Non-ferrous metals such as aluminum cans are separated using the eddy current separator by using a strong magnetic field to repel aluminum from the incoming material. After the eddy current separator, sorters will remove any contaminants or remaining recyclables from the scrap aluminum. Once the material has been sorted, we have 2 baler machines that are used to prepare the material for the market. Both machines can be adapted to be used for various types of material. And with the computer systems connected to the material bunkers, we can see when there's enough material accumulated for baling. After the material has been sorted and baled, forklifts load the material onto outbound trucks, which take the material to plastic processors, paper mills, or other end users so that the recycled material can be made into new products. We hope you enjoyed this tour of the recyclables MRF. Be sure to check out our website for more information and photos, and stay tuned for our next MRF tour.
So I'm sorry about the volume, everybody. The key factor in the middle there was there are several steps of fine tuning that our equipment isn't able to do. For example, separating the different types of paper. That at every step in the process, the better quality and the more uniform bunch, an amount of material is, the better quality, the more consistent it is, the higher price you're going to be able to get for it. So the more discreetly things can be divided up, the more you can sell the amount, the things for. Right now in our plastics, for example, we really only divide things into 4 categories. The clean, like water bottles, the number 2, like the clear milk jugs, and then the colored jugs, like laundry detergent things, and then everything else goes into the everything else bin. So we get really good money, and we do a great job sorting those first 3 categories from the rest. But if we can further refine the everything else bin into 6 or 7 different subgroups, we could sell them to people who have a particular interest in just one of those materials, and they don't want to buy bills from us that have only 10% of that material. They'd rather buy a bill that is made almost exclusively of that one type of plastic they're looking for. So these new machines are able to use like little beams of light to actually, as materials going down a conveyor belt, it can detect what material each item is made from based on the density of the plastic and other things. And then it uses little air currents to direct things that are coming off the conveyor belt to different places. So the number 1 plastic will get sent off to the left, and the number 5 plastic will get sent off to the right. And they're able to have bales that are much more uniform and more valuable as a result to the folks who are the next step in the process. And that's what we hope we'll be able to do sometime soon. But in the meantime, we're going to focus on what right now people in Chittenden County can put into their blue bins and what shouldn't go into the blue bins because it causes different kinds of problems. So basically, everything we take fits into one of 2 categories. It's either a paper fiber product or it's a container. So anything that isn't one of those things doesn't belong in the blue bin. So a lot of times people hear, well, we recycle plastic. And so they think any old plastic item that they're holding, whether it's a toothbrush or a laundry basket or a child's toy. Well, this is plastic and it says they take plastic, so they want to throw it in there. And unfortunately, we aren't able to take all those random types of plastic, partly because in many cases, they're made up of a whole bunch of different types of plastic that we can't possibly separate at our level of just sorting. Any particular item just goes to one place. We aren't melting anything down and separating it into its subparts. We aren't able to take, if there's aluminum foil and paper that are fused together, like as an ice cream wrapper, we can't take that because even though each one of those things is something that we might be able to take, when they're fused together, it's no good to us. The aluminum foil people don't want it and the paper people don't want it, and we can't take them apart. So first off, if it's not a container, we can't take it. And then among containers, basically 3 types: bottles, jars, and tubs. So basically any food or beverage jar or can is great. We'll take those. And then other types of things we refer to as tubs. That's going to be like that large yogurt tub there, or plastic like clamshell things that you sometimes see sandwiches or takeout salads in. All those sorts of things. They all go into our mixed plastics bin. But first and foremost, it has to be a container, and generally food or beverage containers, although a lot of like beauty supplies, it's basically household items, laundry detergent, shampoo, conditioner, things like that, rigid plastic containers. So we also can't take anything that's what Rhonda likes to call flippy floppy plastic. So like plastic bags that come from the grocery store, that used to come from the grocery stores, plastic like air bubbles that come in packages that you've ordered. None of those things is a container. Arguably, you could argue that the plastic bags are, maybe, but they're not a rigid container. And they aren't going to hold their shape as they're going through all of our gears and conveyor belts. In fact, what they tend to do is get wrapped around the gears, just like if you've ever been vacuuming and get too close to a shoelace, it'll just, suck that shoelace right around the rollers of the vacuum cleaner. That's what happens to things like plastic bags, and other things we like to call tanglers. Anything that's long and skinny and flexible, like cassette tape, like the insides of old cassette tapes or VHS tapes, things like that. They're just going to, or a long roll of adding machine paper. Things like that are just going to get tangled up. They're not going to behave like a regular old sheet of paper would, and they're going to cause problems, actually disrupt the equipment. When too many bags or things get caught in those gears, we have to shut the entire plant down because it's all one continuous flow. So we have to shut the whole plant down. Somebody has to like put on a harness and climb inside the equipment and cut those bags off with often with saws, and it's not at all easy. Takes a bunch of time, which slows down our production. And it's dangerous, frankly, for the folks who have to climb in there. I mean, we have all kinds of safety protocols, like all industrial employers do, but there's always a risk that something goes wrong. The machine turns on suddenly without warning, and the person could, get their hand stuck in it, or worse. So plastic bags and anything flippy floppy that's going to tangle is a no-no. And then on the paper side of things that we call fiber, we're talking about regular like office paper and envelopes, magazines, newspapers, junk mail that you get, box board like cereal boxes or cracker boxes, and cardboard like the corrugated cardboard that Amazon packages and other things come in. And that's it. Not just any old thing that happens to be made out of paper, because a lot of things that aren't those, like paper cups, for example, they're called paper cups and they're mostly paper, but if it was just paper, it wouldn't be very effective as a vessel to hold liquid. So they are coated with a little thin layer of plastic inside, so that, it'll hold your milk or your water in there. But that means that we can't recycle it because it's, like we talked about earlier, it's two things that are fused together that we can't separate. So that rules out pretty much all takeout food containers. They're, in order to be effective as in holding food and liquid in and keeping air and things out, they are all coated with something. So if the best thing is to try to avoid getting those, which is harder and harder these days with COVID and everybody's relying on takeout so much more. But once you do have them, if you can't reuse them, which I do a lot, and if I get plastic containers somewhere, I just wash those and use them for my own leftovers at home. The ones that aren't reusable, like, coffee cups, disposable coffee cups, things like that, those need to go into the trash, which is a really good reason to, take your own mug places to get it filled up. Take your own containers. Back in the days when you could go out to eat at restaurants and have your food brought to you at a table, the portions for me are just way too big. I order some things and I can just take a look at it and go, that's 3 meals for me. So I know I'm going to be taking a bunch of it home. So I bring a container with me. And when I'm done eating, I scoop it into my container and take it home with me. I don't need to bother the wait staff to go get one for me. And we don't have to waste something that's just going to go into the trash. And then the last thing, it needs to fall into one of these categories. It needs to be clean and empty, which if it's not empty, it can't be clean. And the last thing is size. It needs to be at least the size of a squirrel's head is how we say it, but basically the size of your fist, or at least 2 inches around. And the reason for that is way back at the beginning of our MRF tour. Remember that everything goes through a glass breaker, which breaks the glass into little pieces. And that's how glass gets separated from all those other containers that are plastic or metal. It gets broken into small pieces and then it falls through these grates that have 2-inch holes in them. Meanwhile, the whole cans and plastic bottles, they just float right over the top. They aren't going to fit through those little holes. So that's why we can't take things that are tiny, even if they're made from a material that we would really like to get, because anything that's that little is just going to fall through those holes with the glass, and it's going to be a contaminant in the glass, and it's not going to end up getting recycled anyway, because it's going to get, thrown away at some point in the process when after we've invested all kinds of time and energy separating those contaminants out. So those are our basic guidelines. It needs to be either fiber or a container. And if it's fiber, it can't be a coated one. It has to be just pure, fresh paper. And to break it out a little more broadly, it looks kind of like this: cardboard, mixed paper, clear plastic containers, colored plastic containers, drink bottles, yogurt tubs, glass bottles and jars, aluminum and steel and tin cans. And a couple things I didn't touch on earlier. One thing is shredded paper, and that is an exception to our rules in a few different ways. One way in that it's small and it would fit through those little cracks if it was going through all of that equipment. But because we make an exception to our other rule about plastic bags, we are able to pull those bags of shredded paper off, out of the system before they go through any of the equipment. So the one thing that we take that doesn't fit neatly into those other categories is shredded paper. And that's because it's really valuable. It's the highest value of fiber that we have to sell, because each time you turn a paper product back into pulp and make new paper out of it, each time the length of those fibers gets smaller and the strength of the paper and the types of products you can make out of it are limited. And that's one way that paper is different from aluminum, which we'll talk about in a second. But because that office paper is usually, it's the very first step in the process, it often hasn't been recycled yet. So it's high value fiber. And because it's coming in already sorted, separated from other stuff, we know that it's not going to have a lot of contaminants in it. It's not going to have gotten peanut butter or soda or something that came out of someone else's container. So we're going to be able to bail that up separately and get a much better price for it than if it was just going through the regular fiber line and getting baled all with the other different kinds of paper. So what we want people to do with shredded paper is put it into a clear plastic bag. We need to be able to tell from the outside that it's shredded paper and just shredded paper. And then you need to close the top firmly. Tie it in a knot is best, or a real good twist tie, something that's going to stay on there, so that when it arrives at our facility, the folks in the pre-sort room can just grab each one of those bags and they just pull them off before they go through all those conveyor belts, and we're able to manage that separately. And the other thing that I wanted to touch on a little more is aluminum. And the best thing about aluminum is that, unlike fiber, it does not degrade. It can just be recycled and recycled and recycled infinitely. One can get melted down and turned into a new can, and that can keep going for centuries. The strength and durability of the product that it's made into isn't affected by how many times aluminum has been recycled. So as a result, it's a pretty valuable commodity. And one thing that we get questions about a lot is aluminum foil. And we love aluminum foil. It's a valuable material as long as it's treated in a certain way. And first, it has to be clean, just like everything else does. So if it's got all kinds of melted cheese all over it from reheating your pizza, it does not belong in the recycle bin. But if it's a nice clean piece of foil that you've washed off or didn't get too messy, what we want you to do is scrunch it up into a ball, and then keep adding pieces of foil to your ball until it gets to be big enough, like the size of an orange, so that it will go through our equipment. And being in a ball does two things. One, if the aluminum foil was flat, it's going to behave a lot more like a piece of paper as it's going through the sorting equipment than it is like a container, which is where we need it to go. So by making it three-dimensional and big, it's not going to fall through those little holes into the glass. And it's going to be big enough, have enough heft to it that it won't get blown away by the fans over into the paper area. It'll stick with the container so where we can capture it. So with all that in mind, we've got two quick pop quizzes here. Let's see how we get this going. All right, so, and these answers are anonymous, so don't be shy. Just click on which of those things. Oh, I was supposed to advance the slide to the next picture, and I apologize for that. But these are the things that were in the next picture that you were going to look at. Just another couple of minutes for people to finish up.
And I'll just use this opportunity, Robin, to mention that you do have a lot of questions have come in. So
all right,
we'll want to save some time to get to those because people have lots of good questions.
We are just about at the end. And boy, 83% of you have voted. Nice work. So I'm going to go, it looks like it's slowed down. So I'm going to go ahead and just put the results up here. Hopefully you can see those. So the great news is that 100% of people answering were right on the soda cans, and those are really valuable. We love to get those, and you nailed it. So yay for that. The other things, unfortunately, are not things that belong in the blue bin. We haven't talked about all the reasons for each of them yet, but first and foremost, with the metal bottle caps, those are too small. They're going to fall through the holes with the glass. So they don't belong in the blue bin, although they still can be recycled as scrap metal, which we'll talk about again in a minute here. And it's the same answer for the metal hangers and the metal doorknobs. So the hanger, it's not a container, and the doorknob, again, not a container. So the only things that we can sort at our MRF are just those beverage containers, home supply containers and fibers. But metal is really valuable. We do collect it at our drop-off centers where anything that's at least 80% metal, so it doesn't have to be 100%, it can be a rake with a wooden handle or paper shredder that has a plastic, shell around it. Treadmill, anything like that. If it's at least 80% metal, it can go into the scrap metal bin at one of our drop-off centers. And there's no charge for that because it is a valuable material. And the reason we can take it there is because you're sorting it for us. You're putting it into a container that just has scrap metal. And so it doesn't need to go through any equipment or anything to be sorted. So that enables us to take all those oddly shaped things that can't go in the blue bin. And now here, I'm going to advance. So this is the picture I was supposed to show you before that quiz. Now here's the next picture. So you can take a look at those items and think about which one of those belong in the bin. And here is the next one. And again, don't be shy. The answers are anonymous, so we aren't going to know if you got one wrong. And all of us get things wrong a lot. And even after years of working here, we still ask each other questions and are like, oh, I don't know. It's a lot of this. The rules seem straightforward, but then when you start thinking about them on a day-to-day basis, there are a lot of things that raise questions. All right, I think we'll put a stop there. So it looks like plastic milk jug was very popular. And that is correct. That can go right in the blue bin. Same with reusable water bottle, or sorry, my bad. I was thinking the regular single-use water bottles. So the yes things are going to be the plastic milk jug, the frozen pizza box, and we'll talk about why a lot of people aren't sure about those. Paper grocery bags are great. They're just pure paper, and the same with the cardboard egg carton. So you guys did a great job getting most of the things right. And then the household batteries and the light bulb are no's, and you guys got those right. So the reusable water bottle is a container, and it is made of plastic, but it's not a single use item. It's something that's more like those durable plastic things I was talking about, like toys and laundry baskets. They're made from often a variety of different types of plastic. They're made to be much sturdier and to be used, over and over and over again. So it's not gonna, break down, get chipped up, melted down into a useful material. The way the, water bottles or laundry detergent jugs can. So those are something, we love it when people use reusable water bottles instead of, buying all the single use ones, but you want to, keep a hold of them, keep them clean, keep using them for as long as you can, until once they reach the end of their lives, you can put them in the trash or do something creative with them. Rhonda has a great way to make bird feeders out of things like that. You can turn it into something that sort of automatically waters your plants, all kinds of things. And then frozen pizza boxes, for a long time, those were something that we did not accept. Excuse me, and that changed just a couple of years ago. So we're still working on getting the word out to everybody there. Box board like that, like cereal boxes and cracker boxes, if it's made to go into the fridge or freezer, we used to say that we couldn't take it because it had to be treated in a special way to withstand the moisture. But we've learned from the folks that we're selling to, we can be a little more flexible on that. So as long as it wasn't, the cardboard wasn't made to be directly in contact with the food, then it can still go in there. So if it's a frozen TV dinner or a frozen pizza where the food inside is wrapped in plastic and then it's just in a cardboard box, that's fine. That can go right into the blue bin. Things that can't are things like an ice cream carton or a pint container of ice cream. What else is paper? Oh, milk cartons. The paper milk cartons are things that they're made to be in direct contact with the food that is inside, and so that makes them not. Oh, I'm sorry. I just realized that I had not shared all those answers with you. So here's a little glimpse of them. I won't dwell on those since we need to keep moving along. So sorry, just one more little click here.
And I'll use this opportunity just to mention that there are many ways for you to get your questions answered if they don't get answered here and now, including our hotline that we staff Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 2:30, or we'll also be giving you some emails so you can reach us by email.
Yep. So here's a quick slide just to recap some of the common yes items and no items. We get a lot of questions about paper that has staples in it, and that's okay. We don't want those big, binder clips or anything on it, but 1 or 2 staples are going to be okay getting through the process. And envelopes that have little windows in them. We know, no load is ever going to be perfect. And there are times when you just have to make a judgment on, most of this is paper. It's a tiny little window. And when it gets mixed in with all that other paper, it's going to be a very minimal impact, because at least that is something that can be separated down the road, unlike the plastic lining inside a paper cup. And then in the no column, we've got those food and drink takeout containers. Batteries, again, they can be recycled, but not in the blue bin. You can bring those to any of our drop-off centers, except Burlington, which right now is only open for food scraps. And we'll take those at no charge and get them recycled. There are also lots of stores that take them back these days. Clothing and fabric doesn't go in the blue bin, but you can take it to Goodwill and they will recycle the stuff that can't be, that's no longer usable as clothing. And I think we've talked about all these other items. With the beverage cartons, it's not just the sort of gable top things like milk or orange juice cartons, but also those like juice boxes, or sometimes you'll see soup or broth sold in those, little paper sort of square containers. Those aren't just paper, as I'm sure you suspect. They have many layers. There's, I think, foil and plastic and all kinds of things in there. So those are things that we can't take because of the multiple materials issue. So this last slide just has a few resources for you. You will get all of these also in a follow-up email that we'll send in a couple of days, along with a recording of this webinar, if there's anything you want to get back to that just wasn't completely clear. So now we will spend the last half hour going through all the questions that have come in. So take it away, Ethan and Rhonda.
Okay. Starting with, let's see. Oh, how clean is clean enough? You want to take a crack at that?
Sure. My answer is if you can tell what was in there without a label on it, it's not clean enough. If anything that's in there would come out, the biggest issue, one is the ick factor for the folks who work at our facility, and that is really important. But another thing that's just as important is, one person puts in, a soda bottle that's half full of soda. When that lid comes off, that soda is going to get on everything else that's in the vicinity. So it's going to ruin the paper that's there and many other things. So if there's anything in there that has the potential to come out and contaminate something else, it's not clean enough. And if you can tell, oh, that was a peanut butter jar because you still see peanut butter around there, that's not clean enough. You don't have to scrub it like you'd take a drink of water out of it, but clean.
Thank you, Robin. How about explaining, someone is asking about if the problem to rip up paper, if it has private information on it and what that does for its ability to be sorted.
Rhonda, do you want to tackle that one?
Yeah, I would say shred it up, put it in a clear plastic bag, tie it up and put it in your recycle bin. Or if you're like me, you can just shred it up and feed it to your worms and compost it, because they don't divulge any private information. Just saying. Just
another
saying.
thing that
if you've got like sensitive information, I would definitely like shred your information. But do know that like even if you put unshredded information in your recycle bin, the fact that you put it out to your curb, it gets picked up by your hauler, or you drop it off at a drop-off center, nobody is looking at it and nobody has time to look at it. We are like those guys at the sorting station are sorting 24 gallons of recycling every second. They're not reading your crucial information, and there's a lot of different machines sorting it. So you do not have a problem with that, but if you feel like it's like wicked sensitive, definitely shred it, put it in a clear plastic bag, tie it up, and put it in with your recycling. Because currently that's what we're doing with shredded paper. Might not be the future of shredded paper, but it's definitely how it's done now. I have another question though, Robin, from John, who said it would be great if you could send an email or text to someone when he is not sure about an item for recycling.
Well, you can.
What solution do you have for that?
Well, the easiest thing to do is actually a phone call, which is to our hotline, 802-872-8111. And eager people like the three of us are at the other end, happy to answer questions. And we really like it when they're unusual because that makes it a little more interesting for us. So don't be shy. No question is out of line. Also, if you go to our website, there is a, I'm going to try to look at my screen here and see if I can remember where it is you click. And of course, I'm not finding it. How we can help.
It's all good.
It's all good.
So
You'll find, just peek around.
Net.
Peek around CSWD.net. You'll find a place where you can submit questions, and then those come in to one of us or someone like us, and we just answer them away.
And this webinar is being actually recorded and will be uploaded to Recycle Rhonda's YouTube channel, which is me. I feel weird about talking to me in the third person, but it will be uploaded to my YouTube channel. And at the end of that, it will have me, Robin, and Ethan's email addresses. So you can email any of us and ask us any questions anytime. So feel free to send out an email personally.
Or next time you're at a drop-off center, you can ask the person in the booth, because those guys are whizzes. They know their stuff.
Oh,
and
God.
they're happy to answer questions.
People than we are. All right, I got another one from Margo that says, what about cardboard containers from the freezer, like a pizza box, frozen food container? Can that be recycled? Thank you.
Yes, as long as it's a box that wasn't made to be in direct contact with the food. That stuff, like an ice cream carton or a milk carton, that stuff is going to be too coated and treated in order to keep liquids in and moisture out, depending on which kind of product it is. Those can't be recycled. But if it's just a box and inside there was food, but it had plastic around it, it's good to go.
E-Dog, you're up.
All right, I'm typing away here, but I do have plenty of books. You want to talk about how we can do catalogs and soft covers?
Books.
All right, I will take it. So paperback books, really good news. Those can go right into your blue bin. So if people of a certain age may remember something called phone books, that is an example of the kind of thing that can go right into your blue bin. Hardcover books, unfortunately, cannot. We don't have an outlet for those at the moment, so we aren't taking those. So the options are use them as a monitor stand or a plant stand, or give them away to a library or to one of the many places that take donations of household goods. If it's beyond any of those things, it would be a trash item unless you're really motivated and want to remove both the cover and the binding, that whatever it is that's holding all those pages together. If you've got a lot of kids and a snowy, cold day and some scissors, let them have at it and pull those pages out. But as long as they're still bound together and or attached to their cover, they would need to go in the trash.
Great. Can you talk a little bit about how we determine what we're going to sort into? So this is a more involved question, sort of more theoretical question. How do you find buyers for specific materials? Is there some sort of marketplace so you can determine whether it has enough value to be worth separating?
That is a really good question, and definitely outside my area of expertise. We have people who do that, who are far more knowledgeable than I am. But yes, there are, just as with just about any kind of thing, once you're looking for it, you find, or trying to sell it, you find there's a whole community of people who do just that. And so there are networks of buyers, and they spend all of their time figuring out not only who can buy this, but which of these options is going to give us the better price. And that can sometimes be affected by weather. You know, if there was a while when a lot of the fires were happening, a lot of trucks couldn't get on the roads. So things that normally we just load on a truck and go, there were no trucks to put them on. So little things totally unrelated to the actual buyers can affect our ability to sell things. And those guys are quick on their feet finding solutions. Rhonda, Ethan, anything to add?
I guess I would just mention that we make sure that we have 3 stable markets before we think about considering anything a blue bin recyclable. And so that means that, so redundancies essentially. And so we're not going to just have a market evaporate and all of a sudden have no outlet and have to landfill it. So that was actually another question that came in, is do you ever landfill stuff if you can't find a market? Well, we make sure that the stuff we're telling you to put in the blue bin, we have markets for. So the stuff that's not the stuff we want in the blue bin obviously does get landfilled. But you know, when we tell you you can put your drink bottles in and get them recycled, they are going to a PET recycler who will turn them into new stuff.
Yeah. I was just going to add something to that, which I have now forgotten. So carry on.
If I can give you another one, there's someone who's been very patient in that he asked this question right off the bat. And it's a more complicated one. I'm happy to take a crack at it myself. I'm hoping you'll cover what happens to plastics. I've heard NPR segments that say that after China stopped accepting recycling, that most plastics actually end up in the landfill. Is this true for plastics sorted in your systems?
Take it away, Ethan.
Okay. Well, I would start by saying that I want to draw a clear distinction between all the plastics in our lives, much of which is durable plastic, stuff that's meant to last as long as it can, versus the single-use items that tend to be the blue bin material. So the single-use items are getting recycled generally, even in the absence of China as a market. And like, we're not accepting this stuff to landfill it, as I just said earlier. We're accepting it as we have markets for it. Durable plastics tend to not have markets, and that's for a variety of reasons, including the fact that it's very hard to know what kind of plastic they are. We like single-use items because they are easily sorted by format. So once you start talking about all the plastics that are around us, you're talking about a much, much wider total, essentially. And then that makes the portion that we are able to recycle, the single-use portion, that much smaller. Yes, there are also the issue of the fact that we're not capturing, not all the single-use items are winding up in recycling bins. But the takeaway, I think, to respond to the NPR article is that you can be confident that the plastics we're telling you to put in your blue bin are not being sent to landfill. They are being sent to plastics processors. Sometimes those plastic processors may not be able to utilize all the kinds of plastics that come to them. So for instance, we have a mixed plastics, and maybe some of the contents of those mixed bales are getting landfilled because they're more exotic plastics or what have you. But each of the categories separated into have markets, even though China it's true, it is not accepting most recycled material at this point. Plastics actually stay domestic largely.
And I just remembered what I had wanted to add before is that when we say sell, market things and sell them, there are lots of times when we are paying people money to take this material. We aren't going to landfill it. If it's a material that we accept that we wanted you to put in the blue bin, we are committed to making sure that it goes to the next step in the journey to someone who can make it into a new raw material. So the market prices go up and down. We have at various times paid people to take paper, paid people to take glass. Sometimes we make money and sometimes we lose it. If we lose a lot of money over a long period of time, it seems like it's not going to change. We sometimes regretfully have to stop taking things, which we did with black plastic a few years ago. Rhonda, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say some mixed paper, like our paper industry, like it was the one thing that we actually like sent overseas prior to, like probably 3 or 4 years ago. And for the last 2 years, we have paid over $1 million to ensure that got recycled. We paid that. In 2018, we were making $1 million on recycling mixed paper. So there are troughs and I don't know, hills. I'm gonna call them hills because I don't remember the real term, but anyway. But like, so what people need to remember, like, even though like the cost of recycling, and I don't want to put that in quotes because there is a cost, there's always a cost to recycling. It costs $3 million for us to run the facility in which we sort our recycling every single year. $3 million. And I don't think that people understand there's like a huge cost, because like we may have skewed that by calling recycling free. It is not free by any means. So we've been taking even a bigger hit over the last 2 years. Like I said, over $1 million. It's been over $500,000 each year. 2019, 2020, that we have paid to ensure that the mixed paper, and that would be your magazines, your junk mail, your newspapers, office paper, all of that gets put into mixed paper, gets recycled. One way that you guys can help is to reduce that junk mail that comes up all up in your mailbox. And we will be sending out a link, possibly. Yeah, we will be sending out a link to a website that you can sign up to, like, stop your junk mail. And I have to say, like, within like 3 or 4 weeks, it stopped at my house. So it actually works to stop sending you like little junk mail. But there's like also, there's a lot of different options. But, anyway, I'm going to get off my high horse. Muting.
Did we cover whether broken glass can be recycled?
Broken glass, no, in a nutshell. Partly because a lot of your broken glass is not single-use beverage containers. It's not a jar of iced tea. It's a broken drinking glass or plates or planters, things like that. And those we don't take anyway. And other types of glass, mirrors, windows, the only thing we take are the beverage containers, basically. And then if it's a beverage container that's broken, it can cause injuries to folks between your curb and getting to our facility. There are people involved in picking those bins up, dumping into trucks, and we don't want them getting, their wrists slashed by big old jagged pieces of glass. So you can bring it to one of our drop-off centers and maybe put in the recycling chute there, because there we know we're in charge of getting it from one place to the other, and we know that'll work. But otherwise, trash.
All right, another question. I went to the MRF once to drop off a lot of cardboard, and there was a lot going on. There is always a lot going on at the MRF. And I'm glad that you experienced that, because like, I don't think a lot of people understand. There is a whole lot. You've got 18-wheelers, you got small rigs, you got big rigs coming up in there. There's a lot going on. Just curious, how many trucks go in and out per day? Ooh. Or is there some measure like X number of swimming pools of material per day? It must be a large number.
Yeah, I don't know that off the top of my head. Do you, Rhonda?
Yeah, so we see the MRF sees about 60, commercial trash trucks, if you will, a day. We are processing probably around 2,000 tons a day. So it's a lot. Yeah. So there is a lot going on, Scott. A whole lot going on.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's always important. Like if you've got a large load of a single type of material, like a huge load of material, like of cardboard, call the hotline. We'll send you to the MRF, but you need to call ahead always because they're like, their scale operations are made for trucks coming in and out, like big rigs and haulers coming in and out. They're not made for the little guys. However, it's not saying that they won't accept large loads from little guys or individuals. Let's put it that way. Are caps and lids allowed on jugs and coffee creamers?
Well, yes, they are allowed on bottles and jugs as long as they're attached to the bottle that they came in, because if they get separated, they're going to be too small and they're going to fall through those cracks. The exception would be like a yogurt tub lid, like a quart-sized container of yogurt. Its lid is big enough, you know, it's more than 2 inches across. So that lid could go in on its own, but like screw-on caps from a milk jug or something, those can go as long as they're attached to the bottle. Now with the creamer, maybe I'm not picturing the same thing, but I'm picturing like those little creamers you see on the table at a restaurant or a diner. And those things are too small to go in the recycling bin anyway. But maybe I drink my coffee black, so maybe there are bigger containers that I don't know about.
Yeah, I was thinking of like the quart creamer thingies, but like those little creamers are definitely too small. And the lids itself are like plastic and paper stuck together. And when two things are stuck together and we can't get them easily apart, that automatically says, you're trash. All right, so this is a fascinating question. So from a Laurie, if there is not a buyer for the material, does it wind up in the landfill after being sorted?
Not when we sort it, no. That might be true at some MRFs in some parts of the country, but that is not what we do. And you, Ethan and Rhonda probably remember, it was the summer before last, where something happened that disrupted it might've been those fires with the trucks, but remember there were bales everywhere. Like they were building walls of bales. The whole bale room where they store stuff waiting for the trucks to pick it up was full. Yep. They were stacking them outside. They stacked a whole wall of them along the edge of the tip floor. They were everywhere because we were waiting until we could get them on a truck and get them to a processor.
Excellent. So Michael has to say, I'm sorry, Ethan, I'm not trying to steal your show. I'm just going through the ones that I deemed like we should answer live. Sorry. I hear black plastic containers should not be recycled. True? Question mark.
I hear what kind of plastic containers?
Black.
Oh, true, sadly. That was a change we had to make a few years ago. Again, as we were talking about markets and the need for things to be economically feasible through all of these steps of the process, having black plastic mixed in with our mixed plastics bales dramatically affected the value. Like instead of being able to sell a bale for $300, we were like paying $30 for somebody to take it from us.
It dropped it by $200 a ton. And it's like a very small amount of what we see. It was like 0.06% by weight of what we saw actually sorting our stuff.
Yeah, so we paid that for a long time. We waited to make sure this wasn't just a fluke. this is a real market change. And unfortunately, it wasn't a fluke, and it was happening not just regionally, not just nationally, but all through Europe and worldwide. Black plastic is just, it doesn't have value to the reprocessors because you're very limited in what you can make out of it. Whereas, a nice clear water bottle or a, clearish milk jug, you can turn that into anything you want. But once you get into like the red and blue laundry detergent jugs, it's a little more limited. And then when you get to the black, like that's plastic that's at the end of the line. And so we looked at it, and it was such a small amount of what we were getting, but it was having its crazy effect on all of our plastics. It was endangering our ability to afford to take plastic at all. And so we just had to stop taking that one little part in order to be able to continue taking all the rest.
And that kind of goes into Sarah's question about how about sushi containers from the grocery store? So the black plastic bottom, if that's where you're getting your sushi from, I get it too. So I know what you're talking about, Sarah. So the black bottom's gonna go in the trash, but your clear top, give it a rinsel-dinsel, do ya? Pop that in the recycle bin. You are all set.
But those are great containers for reuse. They're nice and sturdy, and the lids stay on real well. So I just keep those around in my drawer. And
I think it depends on where you get your sushi from.
That may be true.
But I got what you're saying.
All right, next.
I had one. What was it?
Go, Ethan. I'm done talking anyway.
Small cat food cans and lids coated with Teflon, question mark. So I'll answer. I don't know that they're coated with Teflon. I'm not aware that they are. 2-inch rule applies, and most of them do meet the 2-inch rule. I think even the Fancy Feast cans meet the 2-inch rule. Okay, even the small Fancy Feast cans are fine, and that's good, valuable material. Those are aluminum cans, so that's the good stuff.
Yeah. And with the lids, if they're the kind that pull off completely, what I do is I rinse out the can, I rinse off the lid, then I put the lid back inside the can and just squish the edges of the can together so that the lid can't fall out. And that way both pieces can get recycled through the blue bin. Otherwise, your option for the lid would be you can store those separately, like with your bottle caps, and bring those to scrap metal at a drop-off center. But the little tear off caps can't go in by themselves because they're going to cut somebody.
How do you keep glass being broken when the truck compacts recycling?
We don't always. Sometimes it breaks. It depends on the load. It depends on the truck. But once it's at that stage in the process, it's pretty much past the point where it's going to be injuring people, because after that, it just gets dumped out onto the floor, and then it gets, pushed, around by those loaders up the conveyor belts, and it's not getting handled, by people on an individual basis. Let's
see.
You got more? Because I've got a bunch, but yeah.
Yeah.
We've only got 6 minutes left, so just to let everybody know.
If you know what you want to prioritize, by all means. A question about cartons on will they be recyclable on new equipment? My answer to that is that it's not actually about the equipment on the sorting process. It's about the markets they're going to. So some mills, for reasons that I don't know, are able to process cartons by extracting the plastic linings and removing that, trashing those plastic linings, and using the paper. Most mills, and the mills that we have always marketed our paper to, do not have that capability. They need it to be all paper, and so cartons which have plastic embedded in them are a no-go at those mills, and that could change someday. Certainly, the mill technology is evolving just the way MRF technology is. So we hope that will change someday, but it probably won't change as a result of new equipment at a new MRF.
Excellent. So Joe's got a question. How do you find buyers for specific materials? Is there some sort of marketplace you can determine whether
We
it's...
covered that,
We did that
actually.
one.
Oh,
Yep.
sorry. It wasn't done. Sorry. Never mind. You keep going, Ethan, then.
Let's see. Yes, we are aware of Glavel as a glass, a recycled glass product.
Mhm.
Our glass doesn't currently go to Glavel, but it's certainly something that we're always looking at. The economics of moving glass are tough because it's such a heavy material. Recycled glass, essentially like trucking sand. So that's the challenge there. But Glavel is neat stuff made from recycled glass. It's a
Yeah.
building material. I'll mention that we have several people have asked about recycling plastic bags and what we call plastic film, the non-rigid flip-floppy plastic.
Great, yeah.
We are not going to get to that today, but there are great opportunities there that are not in the blue bin. Please do not put that stuff in the blue bin. It will get tangled in our machinery. But our special recycling webinar coming up on the 18th will be diving into that, among other opportunities for special recycling stuff that doesn't go in the blue bin. And somebody asked about if you can't make it on the 18th, as with this webinar, we will record and make the recording available afterward. So
yeah,
keep an eye out for that.
Really sign up, and then like if you don't sign up for any of our webinars, they are always posted on Recycle Rhonda's YouTube channel. And so you can always check out all of our webinars, be it backyard composting, food scrap options. We've done a variety of webinars in the past, and we plan on keeping it going. So please do tune in and check them out there. But this also will be posted there, as will the special recycling at the very latest 2 days after the actual, after the 18th, so 19th, 20th. So.
And if you register for that webinar, even though you can't make it, you'll automatically get an email after the fact that said, hey, sorry you couldn't make it. Here's a link that'll go directly to the recording of it. So that's a good way to do it and know that you'll be able to find it easily.
Yeah. And just to let you know, whatever questions were not answered live or in person, we do have the option. We will download all the Q&A from this webinar, and then Robin will definitely be following up with all of your, like, whatever wasn't answered, she will be following up with your questions. So don't feel like fretted, like they didn't get to my question. She get to. Don't you worry.
There is one thing I just realized that hadn't come up in any of this, and that is styrofoam. Don't recycle it. We can't recycle it. We can't process it. We can't sell it. And that's something that confuses a lot of people. It definitely used to confuse me because it has often that little triangle symbol on it that with a 6 inside, and people think, oh, if it has that symbol, that means it can go in the blue bin. I was one of those people before I started working here. I was so excited because I had always, I had passionately avoided styrofoam everywhere. One time somebody brought a styrofoam clamshell into my house, and as I was throwing it away, I saw that it had a 6 on it, and I was just giddy and washed it off and put it in my blue bin. But just having a number on it doesn't mean it can be recycled at any given place, at any given time. So we still has to be a rigid plastic container, single-use container.
All right, just quick, because I said that I would answer John's question live, which we didn't get to, but
I've got one that I want to answer live too.
Sorry, books, what can be recycled? Soft-covered books in your blue bin. Hardcover books, we do not currently have a program for that. So either toss them all in the trash, boo, or cut the hardcover part off of it, recycle in your blue bin the softy covers, and then ditch the hardcover in the trash. Those are your options currently. If you have a better option, please let us know. Ethan, go.
This one's important because we did want to make sure that people, because it's a misunderstanding a lot of people have, that they think that all glass is being made into new glass. And someone is asking whether our glass is turned into a construction material, and that's exactly right. So this is different than bottles that you turn in for redemption. That's a totally different system. We never see them because they don't need to be sorted. They're all coming in and being sorted as glass as they come in at the store. But the stuff that comes to our MRF and that we sort, we have to break as part of our sorting process. And all the different colors of glass get mixed together in that. And it also gets contaminants in it. And so for all those reasons, it is not easily made into new bottles. It's not practical. It also is very heavy. So we can't ship it anywhere to have it. I mean, it's not cost effective to ship it somewhere to be made into new bottles. And so for all those reasons, instead, it becomes essentially reverted back into a sand-like product that is great drainage and can be embedded into a road-based mix.
And by contaminants, you mean just like trash?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The little plastic caps.
Yeah,
And
non-glass stuff like plastic, corks, whatever, bottle caps, pens, whatever gets put into our glass. Anything smaller than a squirrel's head basically gets into our glass and contaminates it, which means it makes it trashy and unsellable. So keep that stuff out. If you've learned nothing tonight, that's what you should learn. All right, we are 2 minutes over, so we should probably wrap it up.
Thank you to those of you that stayed with us through this whole thing. And thanks for tuning in.
Awesome. Have a good night.
see ya.